I want to talk about Cynthia Rothrock. I have to ask a question, not to make anyone feel bad, but out of genuine curiosity. When you think of actors who are well known for being in action movies, who are also women...
Name a woman.
Name a woman?
Yeah.
Name a woman!
Who do you actually think of?
I've never seen a female martial artist.
Now, there are a lot of possible options. You might think of Angelina Jolie, Michelle Rodriguez, Charlize Theron. However, if you're highly refined, intelligent, cultured, sexy, you might think of Lucy Liu in Kill Bill, or Michelle Yeoh for doing movies like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Police Story 3, Super Cop.
First, there was one. Then, there was two.
What we need is a super cop.
Now, Jackie Chan makes his explosive return. Two women. One, a partner at work. The other, a partner at play.
And yes, I have a copy on DVD. Right off the bat, when I'm trying to describe Cynthia to people, I always compare her to Sonya Blade from the Mortal Kombat games, which have gotten more than one adaptation now, so I actually think it's a criminal offense that she's never gotten that role. Look at the way this bitch moves and tell me that she doesn't belong in a video game.
The precision and the power that you...
Cynthia Rothrock achieved a lot of notoriety in the 1980s Hong Kong cinema landscape, and the reason for that is she was essentially the perfect package that audiences and filmmakers alike relentlessly craved in that era, which is not only a combination of speed, athleticism, and poise, but also a willingness to push your body to its physical limits at the risk of compromising your own personal health and safety. She broke into the scene in 1983 after becoming a world champion in weapons and martial arts forms, which was open to men and women, and she was better than everyone. Needless to say, this was during the 1980s, before it was normal to film actors on a green screen soundstage and then pay your overworked VFX artists in hopes and dreams. I'm talking about an era of movies where knowing karate essentially made you a superhero. Cynthia was definitely destined for the screen, and in fact, her career spawned an entire subgenre called Girls with Guns. And the reason it's called Girls with Guns is because the movies have girls in them, and the girls have guns, and then the girls shoot the guns. There's definitely layers to this, because I can't think of many names for genres that simultaneously feel very earnest in their simplicity and directness, and immediately dated the moment I say them out loud. So if I'm gonna talk about Cynthia Rothrock and Girls with Guns, which is only fair because Cynthia Rothrock is a girl and sometimes she's a girl with a gun, then obviously I have to talk about the movie that started Girls with Guns, which came out in 1985 and is titled Yes, Madam. Immediately before you even start watching, the title of the movie itself is vaguely alluding to a threat. Yes, madam. Which is evoking similar phrases like yes, sir, yes, boss, like you're giving in and obeying orders. But the twist is that the commanding, authoritative role is being played out by girls? And they've got guns. Nonetheless, the movie is also telling us that we're here for a good time, and this is done by way of an intro sequence with bright visuals and very upbeat music. We see that the project is produced by Sammo Hung, who has also directed and starred alongside Jackie Chan. We're then introduced to one of our leading characters, Inspector Eng, portrayed by Michelle Yeoh, who is quietly browsing a store before all hell breaks loose and a random creep flashes his privates at her. And we are jarringly reminded that there is no safety from escapism. There's no distraction from the ugliness of the real world. There's no innocence. Thankfully, though, a fellow officer of the law teleports behind this guy, or it looks like that's what happens. He basically materializes out of thin air. So, Inspector Eng is gonna need extensive therapy, but that's gonna mean extra minutes that we don't have, so we're not gonna process or reflect on that. She leaves the store, and then a group of ne'er-do-wells attempt a heist on an armored bank truck. And that's when you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're watching a Girls with Guns movie, because she's a girl and she's got guns. It's a strong opening. I think the direction from Corey Yuen is very bold and dynamic. The pacing, editing, and framing is very deliberate and specific, but at the same time, very straightforward, yet still effective. Everything feels very stylized. This group of guys isn't having a great time, though. The money heist was not what it was cracked up to be. In fact, all of them get brutally executed. So it's been about 4 minutes, and in the span of that time, one of our leading characters has been severely harassed, traumatized, and nearly killed in a gunfight. But once again, we don't really have time to spend on that. so we're not going to process or reflect. Besides, she has to get back to work to pick up her flowers, obviously. It turns out that one of her previous superiors is an admirer, and he ordered the flowers for her. When her current chief of police finds out, he's like, hey, do you mind if I do some inappropriate workplace conduct real quick?
Richard Norman 係邊個環頭㗎？未聽過嘅？
係我喺蘇格蘭場受訓嗰陣認識嘅導師嚟嘅。過幾日我就喺英國度假，仲住喺佢屋企添。
咁我咪即係冇行？
皇上，唔好食我豆腐啦。
She's like, okay, weirdo. I guess that's why you cheat on your wife.
皇上，唔好食我豆腐啦，爆俾你老婆知話你有二奶㗎。
sorry， 忘記咗你啲麻婆豆腐係認真辣，唔係咁容易食嘅。
Really normal conversation to have with your boss. Something I realized very early upon revisiting this film, because it's been in my roster for a while, is that one of the biggest themes, intentionally or otherwise, is depictions of a frightening reality that very many women have faced, except without the long-term effects or consequences. You can be anywhere on the spectrum of femininity, whether it's being born a girl, identifying as a girl, being a girl with a gun, and you run the risk of facing harassment in certain situations. That could be at the hands of a random perpetrator, or it could be your boss. He's just gonna be more subtle about it. We get both of these examples at the start of the movie. It's like the assumption was that in order to have the concept of these two female leads kicking ass, we needed the inclusion of these inappropriate encounters to make that concept believable. Again, these are depictions of a very uncomfortable reality, but without the extra time taken to process or unpack those things. So her experiences of harassment are basically the conceptual equivalent of background extras or set dressing, things that exist to take up space and make the world around them believable without taking up any kind of prolonged focus. Anyway, moving on. We see the plotline start to unfold as Inspector N arranges a rendezvous with Richard, the guy who ordered her flowers. Richard is checking into a hotel, and then we get to hear maybe one of the most extraordinary English dubs I've ever heard in a movie.
Oh. Thank you very much.
Very normal, thank you. Then we get this amazing establishing shot, which is just a close-up of the reflection in this guy's sunglasses, which I think is cute. Richard is examining a microfilm, which in screenwriting terms is a plot device. If you've watched a lot of action movies, you know there are so many examples of this. And if this was made a decade or 2 or 3 later, he would absolutely be holding a CD or flash drive. What's on the microfilm isn't important. It's just a bunch of inside information about criminal organizations or whatever. Richard conceals the microfilm in his passport, and then a very mysterious and very ominous gentleman appears. Who could it be? Well, it turns out to be none other than Mr. Dick. He tries to make a deal with Richard for the microfilm, and Richard turns him down, which results in one of the coldest executions in the movie.
你嘅職業係數師，我嘅職業係殺手。快啲放低支槍，如果唔係我嗌救命！
Meanwhile, 3 other criminals who are in the same building, whose names are Aspirin, Panadol, and Strepsil. If I was one of those edgy movie reviewer dudes from the 2000s that teenagers loved, I guess I'd make a joke here about how those are the pharmaceutical drugs that the screenwriter or director was taking. But that would be crass and uncouth. If someone who has a deep, intimate knowledge of this movie can tell me why these guys are named after random pharmaceutical. If anyone who has a deep, intimate knowledge of this movie can explain to me why these guys are named after random pharmaceutical products, that'd be great. So these 3 guys are breaking into hotel rooms and pilfering items, and as you can imagine, one of them steals Richard's passport with the microfilm inside. We're nearly 30 minutes in, and then we get this insane cameo from the producer, Sammo Hung. The relationship between Panadol, Aspirin, Strepsil, and Sammo's character isn't really elaborated on. They refer to him as Sifu or Master. He is clinically insane. The trio of petty criminals is trying to raise enough money through illicit means to be able to afford a house for the old man. Movies like this will typically take you along for a very long, goofy, sort of slow burn, and then the action picks up, and the movie punches you in the face, and it grabs you and shakes you, and it says, pay attention. Right before everything goes out of control, Inspector Eng is assigned a new partner, Carrie Morris, played by none other than Cynthia Rothrock. Carrie and Inspector Eng have very contrasting methods. They don't work together well, or at least that's what the script is saying. Like, the implication is that Carrie is the loose cannon of the duo, while Inspector Eng is the serious, officious, let's get it done by the book type of cop. In reality, they're both kind of unhinged. It's just that Carrie maybe has slightly more violent tendencies. Inspector Eng will be like, hey, no, don't do that. That's police brutality, maybe. Stop. That being said, I could probably watch them fight for hours on end. The moment that Cynthia Rothrock steps on screen, everything kicks up a notch. And honestly, this is how you spoil audiences, because not only do you have Michelle Yeoh making an explosive intro, but now you have Cynthia joining her, and the charisma of the movie is doubled. None of my commentary can do this justice in the same way that my favorite line of dialogue in the movie does, which is,
係好嘢喎，睇唔出呢個鬼妹有幾勁喎。
the foreign chick is very swift. So, someone tries to use a passport that he got a member of the pharmaceutical trio, Panadol, to forge for him. Panadol double crosses his customer, who is savagely beaten at the airport by Inspector Carrie as a result. After this, he escapes, enters Panadol's apartment, and then tries to torture him. Now, it's rare that you genuinely don't know what to expect when you're watching a movie. I could not have predicted how this scene was going to progress. He's defending himself with all kinds of random gizmos. Like, he's got moving walls made of steel mesh that fold into a cage to trap his attacker. He's got hidden doors to crawl through, spring-loaded drawers that fly out to hit this guy. There's even a gag at some point where he has a bundle of dynamite which is ripped directly out of, like, a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Bye-bye!
I think the way that he escapes is inspired. Now, there's not much point in me trying to explain this. I'm just gonna let this scene transition speak for itself. That was kinda cool. That's really all I've got. Inspector Carey proceeds to interrogate Panadol, and her abusive tendencies continue. Once again, in contrast, Inspector Eng is the reasonable one. Over the course of the interrogation, the remaining members of the pharmaceutical trio, Strepsil and Aspirin, are incriminated. In the following scene, we discover who Mr. Dick is working for, a crime boss known as Mr. Tin. Also, very minor detail, but out of the many powerful fashion moments in this movie, I've got to say that this is a highlight. The tank top with the sheer button-up is absolutely incredible. Anyway, it's not really important what they're talking about. They just want the microfilm back because it contains evidence of all of their operations. So now, both the police and Mr. D are looking for Strepsil and Aspirin. So inevitably, all of their paths cross at the same time. Aspirin and Strepsil are cornered in a bathroom by Mr. D, and the inspectors burst in to save them. Now, when Mission Impossible 6 came out in 2016, a lot of people were raving about that one fight scene in a bathroom. I agree, it was great. This fight scene is only about half as long, and it's still just as impressive. You could say that a lot of Hong Kong films in the 80s were ahead of their time in terms of how the action was executed, and a lot of modern action movies that have been popular have taken inspiration from the visual language of how those fight scenes were choreographed and framed and edited. Aspirin and Strepsil manage to evade capture, and then they get up to some shenanigans. I guess the two of them are supposed to be some sort of comedic duo. I find it excruciatingly insufferable. They're very annoying, but I do give them credit for assaulting a parking inspector. It has nothing to do with the plot, it's just nice to see. And it's extra funny because he tries to be tough about it, but then Michelle Yeoh, because she's an icon, is like, oh, well, if you're fine and it's fine, I'll just discharge them. And then he freaks out about them being let go after beating the shit out of him. To cut a long story short, Panadol has the microfilm, but he doesn't know that because it slipped out of Richard's passport without him noticing. And meanwhile, the inspectors have detained Mr. Tin, the crime boss, but they don't have enough evidence, and the chief of police is pissed. And immediately after their attempted arrest goes sour, they hand in their badges and essentially become vigilantes. And now, finally, it's time for me to talk about the best part of this movie. Inspector Eng, Inspector Carey, and Strepsil, a dynamic trio, face off against Mr. Tin's gang. The first thing that strikes me about this sequence is the sheer amount of distinct and unique movements. Also, distinct and unique spinal damage. Spinal damage on a level that challenges you and forces you to contemplate the fragility of nature's design for the human body. This stunt guy gets launched off a balcony, does a flip, and annihilates himself so completely that they replay it during the end credits just so you can walk away remembering how badly this guy got hurt. Speaking of pain, Cynthia Rothrock's opponent, Dick Way, maybe we should call him Richard Way, did not hold back, and when Cynthia failed to dodge one of his kicks, he struck her in the side of the head with such unrestrained blunt force trauma that she started bleeding out of her ear. She came back to the set, still bleeding, after seeing a doctor who said there was nothing they could do. Maybe they told her to drink a glass of water or go for a walk? I don't know. Something else that's crazy and, dare I say, unfair is that after Cynthia Rothrock partially choreographed a segment of the fight scene where she does her trademark scorpion kick, Dick Way allegedly wouldn't take a kick to the face. If you pause, you can see there's a double taking his place, which is weird because personally, I would pay Cynthia Rothrock to kick me in the head, but apparently this guy didn't want to get tapped on the face.
I was fighting Dick Way, and during this scene, he hit me in the ear and split my external ear open. My ear was bleeding, one of the most dangerous injuries I occurred. I went down, and blood was coming out of my ear, and I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna die, because I've seen movies when blood comes out of your ear, everybody dies.
Summarizing this movie as an action comedy is a very succinct experience. For me, the final sequence is the best part of the whole thing. This has something in common with a lot of Hong Kong movies from the 80s. The very end, like the last 20 minutes or so, is the best part of the movie. You know that they put all of their effort into that final sequence. And if that final sequence existed by itself as a short film, it would be a masterpiece. You can watch that segment out of context, and you know everything about every character just by looking at them. This is where we see a lot of highlights, not just in terms of action. There's this incredible character interaction. The crime boss has this underling. Someone points a gun, and this guy immediately tries to take the bullet, realizes it's fake because the gun was shooting blanks. He's kind of surprised at the fact that he's still alive, but apart from that, they just behave like that's his job. He's being paid to stand there in case somebody pulls a gun and he can leap in front of the bullet. This movie summarizes Cynthia Rothrock's career, in my opinion, and I mean that in a complimentary way, because despite the fact that the movie has a lot of outdated elements, it's iconic. Cynthia Rothrock is an integral part of how iconic it is, and is basically one of the magic ingredients, the other being Michelle Yeoh, that make this movie stand the test of time, I think. I don't really do ratings, I just talk about movies. However, the climactic final sequence is a 10 out of 10 experience. I recommend watching that uninterrupted. If you like the 80s, if you miss the 80s, I don't know how old you are, if you like one of the lead actors, maybe you like things that are outdated, because it's a time capsule and you get to experience a different era and culture of filmmaking. Maybe you just like action movies. If you said yes to all of the above, watch the entire movie and you may have the greatest experience of your entire life. It's also possible that you really dislike everything here in general. Like, share this around, copy and paste the URL, get this on Twitter, Facebook for the elder millennials. Let a lot of people see this so that they know it's cringeworthy, and like and subscribe so you get to be updated on how bad everything is. I've been Bleak, and if you've been hate watching, mwah, I hate you too. And if you love me, I love you too. Not like that. Don't make it weird.